Hey folks, so today we're going to be talking about how to play the song Title Track by the band Death Cab For Cutie from the album We Have the Facts and We're Voting Yes. We're really just going to go over the main riff today. That is the repeating riff you hear throughout the song, typically played by Ben Gibbard when the song is seen live. It's a really great song to learn if you want to work on things like alternate picking, maintaining the structure of a bar chord, and using some of your lesser used fingers, in this case the pinky, to slide up to a given note and slide back to the main riff. So we're going to zoom in on the fretboard here and get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do when learning this song is establish our home base for the riff. And that's going to start with your first finger, your third finger, and fourth finger here, beginning almost at a bar chord. So what you'll want to do is take that first finger and bar the second fret from the A string down through the E string. In this riff, we're not going to be using the E string here, but it just makes sense to go ahead and bar all the way down. Once we have that bar established, we're going to use our third finger here on the fourth fret on the A string, and we're going to use our fourth finger, the pinky here, on the fourth fret on the G string here. So you're going to be looking at a chord that looks something like this. Now this is the shape we're going to use to get into this riff. We're going to be modifying it as we go, and then we're going to have to land back to this riff after the cool slide up part. So to get started here, you're going to want to start with all three fingers down, and you're going to start strumming down from the A string. So with our home base established, as mentioned, we're going to start strumming down from the A string. So with all three of our fingers down, we're going to start establishing that pattern, which goes from the A string down to the D string, to the G string, back to the D string. So we're going to do this in a fluid pattern. We're going to go down 3, up 1. Once again, that is down 3, 1, 2, 3, back up 1. Once we have run through that a couple times, just to get familiar with that feeling, we're going to move into the second part that we'll chain together, where we're going to lift off on our third finger. So we still have this barred all the way down on the second fret, but the only 4 fret we have is the pinky here on the G string. So once again, after we've gone down initially, we're going to lift off that third finger and go down like this in the same pattern. So if we chain those together, it's going to sound like this. Now after that, we're going to go back to our home base with the third finger down as well. And we're going to play that through one more time. So once we have all three of those, it's going to sound like this. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. Because not only are we lifting off on the third finger here, we are actually going to have to move our first finger down to be able to hit that open A string. So there's a few different ways you can do this. My preference is to simply lift off the third finger here and just slide my first finger down out of the way. And once we have that available to us, we're not going to follow that same pattern. We're not going to do the down 3 up 1, we're actually going to just follow it all the way down to the B string, which is that second to last string right there. So with that open fret, we have the open A string. We're still barring the rest of the second. We have our fourth finger here still on the 4th fret of the G string. That'll sound like this. So instead of going down and coming up, you're continuing down onto the B string and hitting that note. So that is the first half of the riff. Once again, all the way chained together, you're going to start with your 3rd finger on home bass here. It's going to sound like this. Little difficulty getting that finger off there. But once again, you're going like this, this, back to our home bass, and then we're going to drop that finger down and follow through. Once we have the first half of the main riff down, we need to learn the second half before we can really chain those two together. Now, this second half is the part where you will be doing the slide, the kind of slide up note you've probably heard in the riff, and it starts much the same, right? You start on our home bass here that we've established, and we're going to go down and up, down 3 up 1. Ready? In the same way, we're also going to lift that 3rd finger off, continue on in the second part of the riff in the exact same way. So we're going to continue on in the down 3 up 1 pattern, leveraging that barred 2nd fret, 4th finger, 4th fret on the G string. Now, this is where it's going to get a little different and a little more difficult. Much like the first half of this riff, toward the end, we are also going to drop that 1st finger so we can open up that open A string. But instead of continuing down through to the 4th note here, we're going to end on the G string and we're going to slide up. So what we'll do is, after completing our 2nd form, we'll drop down here and we'll hit the open A, 2nd fret on the D, that 4th fret on the G, and we're going to slide that up to the 6th fret and then further up to the 9th fret. So like this. To me, in the recording, it sounds like they sit with that note there and let it fall in a musical way. But instead of going all the way down through or coming down 3 and up 1, you're going to land on that pinky finger, that G string, and you want to hit that hard so the note will ring out as you slide up from the 4th to the 6th to the 9th. So to do that, once you've dropped into this position with that open A string, it's going to sound something like this. So with that in mind, let's take a look at how that whole second half of the riff will come together. If you put everything together, pardon my sloppy playing, it'll sound something like this. Once we have both the first half and second half of the riff down pat, it's now time to try and combine them. So as a reminder, we're starting again on home bass that we've established so far. And in the first half of the riff, we're going to be leveraging that 3 down, 1 up pattern and the play through. And on the second half, we have the abbreviated version of the riff with the slide up. When we combine the two, Once again, pardon the sloppy playing here, but it should sound something like this. If you're having a little bit of trouble getting this down pat, or feel discouraged that you're not picking it up as quickly as you want to, I would just say, hey, I've been practicing this song for a few days now, and it's still taking me some time to really nail the cadence of that. I mean, these songs that are written by other people often take a little bit of time for us to just wrap our heads around, the kind of pacing of it, the cadence of it, how the finger's supposed to slide. With that said, there's a couple things that I've been practicing to help myself not mess up as much. The first is making sure that I am working on that transition from the second fret of the A string to the open A, and that's where we slide that first finger down in our barred part of the home bass, and making sure I get my finger completely out of the way of the A string kind of ensures that I'm not going to be accidentally deading that. So even just working on moving that finger effectively, I think can be super helpful. Another thing would be just isolating that pinky for the slide part. That's the thing that I've been struggling with quite a bit. And so I've just been kind of muting the rest of the strings and keeping the pinky isolated, and then just kind of running up and down that slide part. So something like, and just doing that over and over again until you feel comfortable with it. Another thing that's helping me is ditching the pick and going with just my fingers instead. So using my fingers, starting with my thumb, to run through the parts of the riff instead of using a pick. And that's helping me slow down, helping me get my pace, helping me hit the notes more effectively. So that might be something to try as well if you're having trouble there. Now, in terms of tone tips, you can see that I am on the neck pickup in this guitar. The intro of this song has somewhat of a lo-fi feel, so you may want to roll the tone knob back a little bit on your guitar. You may want to consider upping the amount of onboard reverb on your amp if it has it, or thinking about some sort of lo-fi reverb, like I know Caroline Effects makes some really good ones, or looking at something like the Zvex Instant Lo-Fi Junkie to get some of that lo-fi feel, which of course roughly halfway through the song kicks off and gets a little more clarity to it, which is just a really interesting stylistic choice as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was helpful. If you think I got anything wrong about the riff, feel free to comment. If there are other elements of the embellishments outside of that riff you think are interesting, feel free to drop that in the comments and help someone else out. But thanks for tuning in, and until next time.